How many of us were expecting Joel Embiid to take that leap and exert his dominance the same way all the legendary centers have throughout history? I know I did, and I had high expectations for him and the Philadelphia 76ers. As we know, he failed miserably. So that got me thinking, where would this rank among all the players that won the MVP but then stunk it up in the playoffs? We'll see if there have been any past MVP winners that ended their season even worse than he did. Now there are two conditions I'm going to briefly mention before we start counting down the list. We're only going to be mentioning players that came after the 1976/77 season, which is considered the start of the NBA/ABA merger. It makes no sense to include any players prior to this era, since the NBA featured only 2 rounds of the playoffs before the start of the finals for the longest time. That means it was a lot easier for certain players to end their season without winning a single series. And lastly, we're only going to include players that played on teams that had real expectations of making a deep playoff run. For example, Russell Westbrook in 2017 or Nikola Jokic in 2022 shouldn't be included, since no one expected them to carry their teams far in the postseason. Now that we have that established, let's get on with the list. At number 5, we have Moses Malone in the 1979 playoffs. Let me start by giving a little bit of context. Moses did not put incredible numbers in the regular season. Nobody did in this forgettable and dull season. The NBA was in desperate need of some star power, and they were going to get that soon enough once Larry Bird and Magic Johnson showed up in the following year. But until then, the league was in serious trouble. If you don't believe me, I present to you the MVP of the 1979 season, Moses Malone. He averaged 24.8 points per game, 17.6 rebounds per game, 1.8 assists per game, and 1.5 blocks per game. He was spectacular on the boards, but he didn't really excel in anything else. But that's to be expected, since this was only his 3rd season in the NBA, so this was nowhere near his peak season. I think it's fair that we cut him some slack for the way the playoffs turned out for the Houston Rockets. They lost in the first round, 2-0 against the Atlanta Hawks. The reason why I'm not giving him a full-on pass is that the Rockets had a better record, and Moses Malone was easily the best player of that series. The MVP should at least win 1 game for his team. However, Atlanta was simply the deeper team behind the trio of John Drew, Dan Roundfield, and Eddie Johnson. They also held Houston to 15 points below their scoring average. The better team won the series, and they showed that they were for real when they took the defending champions Washington Bullets to 7 games. At number 4, we're going to pick on the Malone name. We have Karl Malone in the 1999 playoffs. For the context of this season, it's basically the same as what we said about Moses in 1979. Karl Malone did not put up great numbers, but nobody did in this atrocity of a season. We're talking about the infamous lockout season, where they forced teams to play 50 games in 90 days. So all these players that thought the season was going to be cancelled reported to training camp out of shape. Needless to say that the quality of the game suffered big time because of it. However, there were a few teams that were ready to go. That included Karl Malone and the Utah Jazz, who wanted to take this golden opportunity to bring a title to Salt Lake City. He averaged 23.8 points per game, 9.4 rebounds per game, and 4.1 assists per game. It was obvious that he was pacing himself in order to get ready for the playoffs. He did just enough for the Jazz to finish with the best record in the league, along with the Spurs. That's probably why he ended up winning the MVP. But in the playoffs, he was not playing like he was the best player in the world. In the first round, he averaged 23.8 points per game on 40% shooting. They needed a clutch basket by John Stockton in Game 4 to save their season against the young and inexperienced Sacramento Kings. Then in the following round, they lost in 6 games to the Portland Trail Blazers, with Malone once again underperforming. He averaged 20.2 points per game on 43% shooting. To give an idea what the mood was in Utah after the playoff defeat, this is what Lauren Jorgensen wrote for the Deseret News after the series defeat. Quote, "The season ended in disappointment yet again, and no one was more to blame for the final loss of the lockout-shortened 1999 season than Utah's resident sharp-elbowed superstar." End of quote. With their season on the line, Malone had 8 points on 3 of 16 shooting. He called it one of the worst games he's ever played, and he's probably right. That is definitely not the way the MVP is supposed to go out. But if this teaches us anything, is that a star player would not change their colors after playing for a certain time. It was foolish to believe that Carmelo would all of a sudden turn into this clutch player just because Michael Jordan was no longer in the league. So if you were one of the ones that thought James Harden would change his ways just because he was playing with Joel Embiid, don't hold your breath. Trust me, he's always going to let you down in the biggest moments. At number 3, we have Giannis in the 2020 playoffs. Before COVID came and ruined the party, the Milwaukee Bucks were having one of the most dominant regular seasons ever, and Giannis was playing out of his mind. He became only the 3rd player to win the MVP and the Defensive Player of the Year award in the same season. He averaged 29.5 points per game, 13.6 rebounds per game, and 5.6 assists per game. It seemed like there was nobody that could stop Giannis and the Bucks. Well, it turned out there were a few things. There was a pandemic that shut down the world. There were injuries that took him out early in the semifinals. And then there was a Giannis wall that was built by the Miami Heat. They did a tremendous job of forming a wall of defenders against Giannis, which gave him no room to operate in the painted area. They exposed him. It was clear that there were still some things that he needed to work on. He averaged 21.8 points for the series. That is 7.7 points less than what he averaged in the regular season. That's not going to get it done in the playoffs, and this historically dominant team lost the series 4-1. Maybe we could blame some of this on COVID, that they completely lost their momentum after they nearly took 5 months off. I feel like that had something to do with it. But the Miami Heat have proven that their 2020 playoff run was no fluke, and that they are more than capable of defeating any team. At number 2, we have Joel Embiid in the 2023 playoffs. We were all there to witness it. This is the same player that won the scoring title by averaging 33.1 points per game. That is currently the 22nd highest scoring average for a single season in league history. The only centers that have done better are Kareem and Wilt Chamberlain. He was in some serious company, which is why some of us expected him to dominate in the playoffs. But here's what happened. He averaged 23.7 points per game on 43% shooting in the playoffs. He averaged nearly 10 points less than his regular season average. As far as his efficiency goes, he shot 11.7% worse. And to top it all off, in Game 7 against the Boston Celtics in the second round, the scoring champion goes for 15 points on 5 of 18 shooting. This was an embarrassment. If we look at the player per game stats for the 2023 playoffs, there are 7 total players that have at least reached the second round that average more points than Embiid did. We have never seen a bigger drop-off in production from any of the MVP winners throughout history. This is going to haunt him for a very long time, and I think it's going to be very hard for him to redeem himself from this. He's going to have to take a page from Giannis when he won the title in 2021. Then there's what the next player did, who also experienced an ugly playoff exit. At the number 1 spot, we have Dirk Nowitzki in the 2007 playoffs. This was extremely shocking when it occurred, and I still can't believe what happened to this all-time great player. Dirk won the MVP after leading the Dallas Mavericks to one of the most successful seasons ever. They won 67 games. Keep in mind that there are only 13 teams in league history that have won that many games. That's the same amount of wins as what the 1986 Boston Celtics, the 1992 Chicago Bulls, the 2000 Lakers, and the 2017 Golden State Warriors had. The Mavericks were a powerhouse. They were a juggernaut. They were expected to have a deep playoff run, especially since they were only 2 games away from winning the title the previous year. It was obvious that Dirk was out for revenge after that bitter finals defeat against the Miami Heat. For the season, he averaged 24.6 points per game, 8.9 rebounds per game, and 3.4 assists per game. He also averaged over 50% from the field, 40% from the 3, and 90% from the free throw. He's one of the few players to be in the 50-40-90 club. They truly had a chance of being remembered as one of the greatest teams of all time. But we all remember what happened. They faced the We Believe Golden State Warriors in the first round. This was a team that only won 42 games in the regular season. They won 27 fewer games than Dallas did. However, the Warriors eliminated them in dominating fashion. They won the series by an average margin of nearly 15 points per game. The Mavs lost the 6 games, and the Warriors won the final game by 25 points. For the series, Dirk averaged 19.7 points per game on 38% shooting. He also shot 21% from the 3. He did not play like he was the best shooting big man in the game. Keep in mind that the Warriors were dead last in opponents' points per game and 19th in defensive rating during the season. Defense was not their specialty, but Dirk just couldn't buy a basket. Just like in the case of Embiid, Dirk was nowhere to be found in the series-clinching game. He had only 8 points on 2 of 13 shooting. After that performance, Dirk was considered to be a choker, someone that couldn't get it done in the playoffs. In the following 3 seasons, he only got past the first round once. But he made it all up when he had one of the most memorable playoff runs in 2011. He erased all of that criticism and backlash after one glorious championship season. And that's what Joel Embiid is going to have to do if he wants to put this season behind him. He's going to have to win, and he's going to have to dominate. The question is he built in the same mold as Dirk and Giannis, or is he just another Karl Malone? That remains to be seen.